Well, here we are on what day is today? Friday? Friday. How are you today, Pat? I believe the snow is swirling around in the show.
Oh, earlier on, well, actually, Jude has cleared a wee bit, but this morning was better. In fact, I had to go to Letterkenny this morning, and on the way up, the car had alternated between -1 and 0. It was bitterly cold. And the youngest son was saying that up where he lives, he says one guy tried to take the car out of a garageway, and he says the car just slid back right into the wall across the opposite road. So the road pretty lethal this morning.
Welcome to winter. Okay, well, we're going to address some things that might create a degree of heated discussion, perhaps, or heated thought. Let's start with a very interesting one, which involves a woman I have seen in the flesh. Actually, she was part of when I was trying to do a campaign to stop them abolishing the swimming pool in Jordanstown. They figured it took too much money and stuff. They just scrapped it. And I was furious because I used to go for a swim every lunchtime. And one of the people we contacted was Kate Hoey. And Kate Hoey was totally on our side. Kate Hoey is a graduate of Jordanstown, you know. Way back, PE graduate. But anyway, she was quite friendly and all the rest on the phone anyway. And I still have her phone number if you want it, Pat. But she's the reason that she's in the news is that she's written a foreword to a Unionist Voice publication, which I gather is masterminded by Jamie Bryson. And I read just briefly what she says here. She says, I support the increasingly strategic activism of young and not so young people within the pro-union community who are coming together in various ways to develop networks and sharing of ideas. Well, I'd support that. You support that, Pat?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that seems to be fine. You want people, whoever they are, be they Unionist, Protestant, whoever they are, to develop as much as possible. But she goes on to say, there are very justified concerns that many professional vocations have become dominated by those of a nationalist persuasion. And this positioning of activists is then used to exert power, exert influence on those in power. So she's essentially giving out that there's too many Catholics in the law, in accountancy, in medicine, the lot. What do you think, Pat? Is she right?
Jude, I think she's sort of tried to explain herself now, the revise. But Jude, she's suggesting, and I'm not saying she is, but I'm just sort of saying, Sir Declan Morgan is a Catholic, I presume, from Derry. Desmond Bowl was former St. Colum's boy. Desmond Bowl was a Protestant from somewhere about East Belfast.
That's right.
Those people were just lawyers. Nobody turned around and said they didn't do a good job for you or for me or anything else. And I think this old one in Northern Ireland, you try to label everybody just by saying, like what Kate Hoey's basically saying is to loyalists, look, them are responsible for you not doing as well as you should be. And I think that's ridiculous. Were there any complaints when there were 50 years of Unionist rule? Not at all. The fact that in recent years, remember Paisley too, Jude, I'm jumping a wee bit here, but remember Paisley said about the BBC, there were too many people with names like Seamus around the place. That's back to all that. Jude, I think most lawyers, whether they're Catholic, Protestant or Hindu or whatever, will do, if you go along and they will try and do the best for you. I'm sure doctors the same and all that. And this sort of attempt to label people, and I think it just strikes a wrong chord with me. In this day and age, trying to label people, oh, by the way, the Fenians are responsible for the loyalists not doing well. That's, to me, is wrong.
Well, I don't know if she says that. I don't think I'm sure.
But she sort of implies the loyalist community, them ones have taken over the law and they're now in positions of influence, and that's why we aren't doing so well.
Well, I think she's touching on two things. That first bit I read out was the need for young pro-union people who should be developing themselves and so on, and that's true. They haven't engaged in, it's historical, but they haven't engaged in education in the way Catholics have. As a result, you have a very strong rising middle class of Catholics, and as a result, you have a shrinking population. And, you know, the old days, they could depend, unionist families could depend on work in the shipyards and all the rest of it, because that was thriving. It's not thriving anymore. So these people who are not in the habit of using education as a route to development find themselves in a cul-de-sac. But she's objecting, Pat, to people becoming nationalists, or who are nationalists, becoming lawyers, doctors, academics.
She's saying
they're using these positions, Pat, as activists to exert influence on those in power. You know what she's getting at there, don't you?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's an unspoken, I think it's a dog whistle. Against the likes of Colin Harvey.
These people are influencing decisions by judges. They're influenced decisions by politics, and all that. Jude, I do. This last while, I have noticed a lot of time when during COVID, a hell of a lot of the guys come on have quote unquote nationalist names. Used to be Samuel Gordon or something, and now it's Patrick O'Neill type thing.
You think P. O'Neill now?
No, I'm not thinking about no, I'm just saying. But by the way, you're 100% right, Jude. For years, you had Mackey's, you had Harland and Wolff, you had Shorts, you had all those big engineering places, and what do you call it? The Bombardier and whatever. They all basically the Catholics went for the academic sort of route, and the Protestants went for the the trades, which were very, very well paid. If you got a good job and as a draftsperson or an engineer, with Mackey's, you were well looked after. You had your 2.4 children, you had your 2 holidays a year, foreign holidays, and you had your nice middle class. Now all that's dried up, but the Fenians have got their accountants and their doctors and their lawyers. And that's and that is actually and there's no doubt about it. Like Lumen Christi in Derry, I think is the top school in Northern Ireland performance wise, and most of the top performing schools. And I'm open to correction this, but anyway, several of them are from the nationalist community.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. There's a majority of them are Catholic. Excuse me, but I come back to this point that she is pointing out that the Catholics who do become prominent members of their profession are using that position of sort of influence to be active in the cause of nationalism. And she's thinking about, there's no doubt about it. Like, if you think about it, Colin Harvey told me, for example, that, when he made a statement about the need for a border poll, that the complaint was not lodged with him. His complaint was lodged with his superiors.
Yeah,
and there was demands that he not be allowed to use the title of professor at Queen's University after his name if he wrote a letter or wrote an article.
Yeah.
So there was an effort there to become frightened, I suppose, because here's somebody of impeccable sort of credentials. It's not some wee gutter snipe that's saying this. This is a guy who's a professor in human rights law in Queen's University. If you think about that famous civic forum thing that we went to, who was it? One of the prominent people in the organization of that was Niall Murphy. And Niall Murphy is a Catholic, clearly, or Catholic background, and he's a prominent lawyer. And so you go right back to Pat Finucane. I think that notion of, they do say, that the Glenanne gang singled out Catholics who were not even for their politics, because many of them were SDLP, but they singled them out because they were rising in the class struggle. They were setting up a wee business and making their way in the world into the middle class world. Yeah. And they really wanted to put the frighteners on them.
Yeah, well, I think Kate Hoey is basically sort of saying, look, the Catholics and the nationalist community are growing in influence, and we must do something to counteract that. And I think that's Jude, I'm not sure that's a good place to start. No, to start, like, are the Catholics going to go back and start saying, no, reverting to, well, let's put a label on everybody?
Or are they saying, well, somebody said, who was it that said this? Somebody tweeted this today. they were saying, that the Catholics have learned to do, or, nationalists and Republicans have learned to do politics well. Are they supposed to stop being good at it and wait till the unionists catch up?
Right. I know, what do you call it? I've been watching a wee bit about Trump and Joe Biden in America. And basically, they're saying the Democrats are trying to weaponize January 6th. What are they supposed to do? They ignored. Well, the same thing over here. Like if the nationalist community has risen and they've got the doctors and the lawyers and they're people in key position who have got the intelligence and the strategy to work for the nationalist community. I'm supposed to sort of say, oh, by the way, every statement I make from here on in has to be middle of the road. Yeah, like Jude, I am a nationalist. I am entitled to say I support a United Ireland. I am not going to shoot anybody for it, but I'm certainly going to promulgate it, and I'm going to, because it's a genuine belief. I think the people who live on the island of Ireland should decide our future, not somebody living on another island across the road.
I agree with you, but there's two stages to this. One was during the Troubles, there was actually a beginning of a rising of middle class. Yeah. There were many middle class. I mean, not the SDLP was the biggest party.
Yeah,
but they didn't talk about nationalism. They didn't talk about a United Ireland pole because they were afraid of being killed. Putting it bluntly, they were afraid of being killed. And I would have been the same. I would have had nationalist notions, but I certainly didn't talk to them, my next door neighbor, about them or raise the subject because at that time, that was dynamite. If you said that you were in favor of United Ireland, you were in favor of the IRA. So there was that. Now we've moved out of the Troubles and we're in a peaceful place, and more people, nationalists, Republicans, certainly nationalists, who wouldn't have spoken, like myself maybe, to some extent anyway, they now are prepared to speak out their mind. Now, that's very, put yourself again in the shoes of these guys, like Kate Hoey. Very hard to live with that. All your days, you're brought up and you saw the Catholics as being a kind of an underclass. They weren't challenging you in any way. And now, not only are they challenging you, but they do seem to have actually passed you by. So
that I think that's a busy, and that's, maybe it's true of everything. But you see, when you look at that, they say in America that after Barack Obama, that's what's brought along Trumpism. I think the same, the rise of the nationalist community over here has brought this out. There's this thing, wait a minute, we're getting surpassed right, left and center by these nationalists.
I think that's what it is. And that's what she's appealing to. Jimmy Bryson, is, he told me one time that he was studying law part-time. And I wouldn't be surprised. And I said to him at the time, I said, good on you, that's a good idea. It's a pity more people wouldn't do the same thing. And he could well become a lawyer for all I know. I know it's popular to laugh at Jimmy, but I think he's not stupid. And in some ways, I quite like him in some ways.
It's quite like it in some ways, but the phrase in some ways. But Colin Eastwood, I thought yesterday, he thought I was actually very sarcastic. He says he called him a pound store lawyer.
Well, that's a bit harsh. It's all right for
but he sort of says a guy who just gives speeches from the top of wheelie bins, and he says he's now the legal advisor to loyalism.
Well. I don't know. I sort of tried to read this with Jimmy there.
I just thought it was a nice cheap shot.
The SDLP are very good at not necessarily cheap shots. They can mold a sentence very well. They can have a lasting impact.
But just to finish it, there was a certain player, and I remember one of the guy came into the office one day. He said, "Yeah, he was a good, hard, useless player." Right, go ahead.
Yeah, I know the type. Yeah. Okay, let's leave more local problems. And we're staying with local problems because we're back to the gay cake. My God, I thought that was dead and buried. I thought we'd had our cake and ate it long ago. But apparently the gay cake is back on the menu. Tell us about it, Pat.
I was following, there's two big issues here. Was it discrimination, against Gareth Lee, the gay guy who was asked for the cake with Bert and Ernie on it, a 36-pound cake that somewhere was Asher's in Belfast. And then there's the rights of the young Christian, or I don't know what age they're, but I think they're relatively young anyway. Christian couple.
Well, where?
Who the woman, I think her name's Arthur, Mrs. Arthur. She took the order originally, but then when she noticed, or somebody noticed, that they were it was say we support gay marriage, they, as Christians, said we can't support that. Now they apologized to Gareth Lee, give him back his money, etc., and says, look, no hard feelings, but as Christians, we don't support this. We believe marriage is between a man and a woman, not gay marriage. Now, Jude, I am totally, completely, and utterly confused about this one, totally, because I'm on both sides and I support both. I think I think Gareth Lee, or is it Gareth Lee? I think he was quite entitled to go to a shop. If you're a cake baker and it's not against the law, if you're selling something, he was quite entitled to go and ask for a cake and please put this on it. But they were quite entitled as. No, I think people have your conscience. They're saying, look, we have nothing against you for being gay, but we don't agree with this. So, Jude, I am right. I'm sitting so much on the fence. I've got splinters everywhere in this one. I think you're both right. Yeah.
My bum is safe. I'm on one side rather than another. I think that the young couple, the people that were making the cake makers, I think they were right. I'll tell you why. Because if I was running a cake business and some guy came in and said, I want you to do a cake and I want you to show Edward Carson and Ian Paisley little figures on it, and I want you to have a slogan on it, Britannia rules the waves, something like that. Or even too many tigs around here. I wouldn't do that. I think I'd be within my rights. I make cakes, but I'm damned if I'm going to make cakes and say stuff that I have no belief in or that runs contrary to my own views. So I would have thought that was fairly obvious that you were entitled to sell cakes under normal circumstances. But if somebody's asking you to put slogans on the cake that are against what you believe in, then you don't have to do it. But I can't remember. Did they lose the case at the High Court?
No, what it called, they lost the case. Gareth Lee took it. I think there was 2 or 3. There were Gareth Lee lost the first one. I think then they appealed it and he won that one. Then he went up, and then it went all the way up to I think domestic courts, and he lost the final one, I think, in the British Supreme Court, and then he took it to Europe. But Europe has refused. The European Court of Human Rights. But Jude, I'm not 100% certain. It's very technical. They refused to hear the case on the basis that they said he hadn't totally exhausted his cases in Britain. Now, it's something to do with he didn't bring in. He brought this case under human rights legislation, I think, to Europe, but he hadn't raised that issue in the courts in Northern Ireland. So they were sort of saying, wait a minute until you've. But now apparently, because he's already there, that sort of jeopardy. He's already been in court once. They're not going to hear it again. So apparently, but he is Gareth Lee is apparently saying, look, the issues that originated in this court case are still unresolved. So despite all the legal stuff, Jude, by the way, the other thing that's amazing, this started out as a 36-pound cake. Apparently, it's now up to about 300,000 in legal fees. It kept going and going and going.
Crazy. I mean, see, I'm surprised that you're not of a similar mind to me. Of course, I'm always surprised when people don't agree with me. And I can't see any way but that the guy's entitled to, if they don't want to write something as clearly sort of very partisan on one side or the other, not entitled to say no.
I'm not so sure I agree with your analogy either. Hey, the thing about it is, if I'm a public person and a commercial venue, and somebody comes in and says, look, I want cake with Britannia rules the waves. If you're not prepared to do it, you shouldn't be open as a commercial business. Now, by the way, hold on. There's a difference between a moral issue, like saying I am in favor of abortion, or I'm in favor of gay marriage, than somebody saying, hey, I want Carson and Winston Churchill, but I'm a good nationalist. I'm not doing it. I don't think if you're open to the public, I don't think you have the right to do that.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I wouldn't agree with it.
No, in other words, by the way, I don't like the color of your skin, so don't come in here. Where do you stop?
Oh, no, that's a different thing. That's a different
And I
thing.
know, but that's the point I'm making. Where do you stop?
It's a difficult one once you take it down the road, but I'd still say if I'm making cakes and you come, to be honest, I don't know. I can't see inside Gareth Lee's head, but I suspect that he went there suspecting that they would refuse.
Well, he's a gay right activist, so maybe he knew they would have that issue. But anyway, he got his cake made somewhere else, and he got Bert and Ernie on top of it from Sesame Street and all the rest of it. But then he decided somewhere along the line that his rights as a human being, as a gay man, were being eroded or tramped on, and he decided to take legal action. So yeah.
You see, that's the problem. If you take a stand against against Gareth Lee, the implication is you're anti-gay.
Yeah.
Which is not the case. Certainly, the way you described it, this couple had no problems with gays. If people wanted to be gay, that was their affair, but they shouldn't ask them to swing in to support them from behind.
Yeah, well, that's my understanding of their position, because apparently they apologized to him. They give him back his money. He just says, look, there's no problem, but like, it's not, we're Christians. And Jude, I do support that. Yet, like, I would call myself nearly the ultimate liberal. If it's not illegal, I am saying, and you're two consenting adults, do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, difficult one, really. Difficult. I haven't solved it. The European Court didn't seem to. I didn't cast much light.
They didn't. So the question is, was Gareth Lee's human rights eroded, and as freedom of conscience, does it cover all bits?
Yeah, it's difficult. Okay, with one more now, Pat. I can't remember what it was. What was it? One more topic.
Was it Trump or was it?
Yes, Trump. Yesterday, only yesterday, was the anniversary of the invasion of Congress, and the CNN it was on all day. I think they had different people speaking. They covered Biden's speech and so on, and various people remembered being Congress and crawling on their hands and knees and hearing shots and thinking they're going to die and so on. What did you think?
I think there's a big message there. This whole thing, American democracy is very, very fragile, and it's split down the middle. And in fact, I have subscribed to the Washington Post. I'm sort of fascinated by American politics at the minute, and one of the things is one of the guys yesterday was a very good article. It says a civil war. He said, I don't mean a civil war in the sense of troops lined up on it, but he says he feels that in the coming months and years there'll be assassinations, bombs placed, and stuff like this. Increasing polarization and all. Jude, the evidence of what happened was on the screens. 4 people died on the day, hundreds were injured, policemen were attacked. They actually built gallows, and we've been over this territory before. But Trump and the Republican Party, by the way, the Republican Party, which used to be the Law and Order Party, which was the equivalent of the Tory, have now sort of totally gone over to anti-conspiracy theories, to going anti-vax. Trump seems to have taken them over. These QAnon guys, there was a woman on, by the way, there's a nice program on RT about a guy called Donny O'Sullivan, who's from Carside.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. He interviewed a woman, says, oh, by the way, Joe Biden's not in the White House. He's working from a studio and so on. And you're going, Jesus, Jude, I think I told you the story before. I was walking one day in a place called outside Donegal town, and there was an American guy we met, and he said I think I said this the last day, he said he always thought there's maybe 15 or 20% of Americans were racist bigots. He says what he didn't cop on was that there was about 45%. And Jude, when 55 million Americans vote for Donald Trump, there is serious trouble somewhere coming down the line.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's obvious that the election sort of showed that it was really riven down the middle, and certainly the losers weren't going to accept their fate gracefully. Yep. However, I would say they talk about the dangers to democracy, etc. And I think that those guys running into Congress and breaking windows and all the rest, that certainly was putting the fear of God into the lawmakers. That was a threat to democracy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an effort to put in place a coup, because Some of the guys going in there had guns, but there wasn't really many of them. If you're
Yeah.
going to actually take on the forces of the state, you'd have to be a bit more strategic about it than that. I thought that point needed to be made clearer. That doesn't mean it wasn't very sinister. Somebody said on CNN yesterday, it was a bit like Kristallnacht in Germany in the 30s. When
it was a catalyst for something else.
It was a warning shot, what's coming down the line. And that I could believe. For sure. What's astonishing is that the entire Republican Party, virtually, with the possible exception of Cheney's daughter, I'm still reeling from that, that she is actually the champion of people in the Republican Party who think that Trump stinks. Astonishing.
But no, I think that's the point. That is the key point. It's the fact that the Republican Party are almost in denial. That Kristallnacht analogy is very good, because that's exactly, Jude, it's when the mob took over the parliament. I don't think it was organized. I don't think it, but they, as Joe Biden yesterday said, Trump was sat in a dining room watching it and gleefully, and he said it was like a dagger to the throat of American democracy.
That's very
he loved what was going on, and the Republican Party don't own this at all. They try to say it was like what was a false flag operation run by Democrats, and by the way, they are still trying to claim it's the big steal, the big lie, like the fact that Trump lost by 7 million votes. They haven't turned around once and produced one bit of solid evidence to prove that. And the states where Republicans were elected and where Republican officials ran the elections, they still haven't produced any evidence to back it up. Yet there are so many people. And the thing about it, America is a sort of a weather vane for the Western world in regards to a lot of things that democracy and so on.
Well, that's true. We do look to them, but at the same time, we always have accepted the fact that some of them are a bit crazy, going back a long time. But I think it wasn't what happened, but the sort of symbolism of what happened. It's a bit like, I thought about it, and I was thinking, what would be the equivalent here? And if you were in 1950s Ireland, Catholic Ireland, it's like a bunch of guys coming in and peeing on the altar. They didn't, these guys killed some people, but they didn't, in terms of their numbers, it wasn't an assault to attack everybody, or they didn't succeed in killing a lot of people. But it was that they went right to the heart of the place where the lawmakers were, and put the fear of God in them, and, acted like clowns, and highly disrespectful. You could see how, as a Democrat, you'd be outraged at that kind of thing. And you would be fearful of what's to come. It is a worrying. A lot of people.
I think what people are outraged about, Jude, is the fact that the Republicans are not outraged.
Aye, that's right. That's right. The thing that saddens me is that the Democrats seem to almost be accepting of their fate in terms of the midterm elections.
Well, you see, the COVID's still going on. What is that package? The Biden's trying to get through to try and build infrastructure. It's got stuck. There's
that's one of their own men. One of their own men.
One of their own men stopped one of the Democrats. They've pulled out of Afghanistan and so on. But the whole thing about America, it's an unbelievable, ridiculous setup.
Sort of sad. I mean, China must be rubbing its hands, because China is intent on replacing it as the world power. And
look what the Russians are doing in Kazakhstan this morning.
Not too smart.
But by the way, Judd, before you go, here's a quick question for you. What are your aspirations for the year ahead?
Are you asking me about my New Year resolutions?
Well, I don't know if you even make them, but what would you like to see happen in the year ahead?
What would I like to see happen? Well, I'll tell you the thing I really would like to see happen. I would like to see the nationalists/Republicans who favor a border poll putting in place some practical structures, so that people, maybe like myself or yourself, or I'm sure lots of more able people, could play a part in doing so. I'm tired of people talking in general terms. I really am, saying support us. Don't give me that. Tell me how to do it. make it practical, make it real. Because once you do that, I think that'll assist the whole cause enormously. But it's time we stop talking. Time we stop talking.
Well,
the
people who are elected north and south are the people who are getting paid to do what you're just after saying.
Exactly. Why aren't they doing it? I think anytime
it's not me and you.
Anytime a guy opens his mouth, who is an elected politician, nationalist Republican, and talks about a border poll and supporters and so on, he should be asked how. And if he can't give an answer, say, take a walk. I don't want to hear that again, just vaporizing. Okay, I'm leaving you with this, but I'm just going to tell you this, but I'm not going to talk about it because there isn't time. It appears there was a Zoom meeting of a committee, a Stormont committee. And Melissa McHugh, who's a Sinn Féin MLA, has objected to what was in the background in Jim Allister when he was shown, because Jim Allister was speaking from his office at home. And in the background was a book. And it was a book, I think it's called Gallant or something like that. And it clearly was a book giving the history of the UDR and saying what a splendid body of men they were. She was saying there's supposed to be a rule about flags and emblems at work. You're not to have these. And Jim Allister is saying they're trying to dictate the contents of my study because they're so easily offended. Right. I'll give you 10 seconds on that. 10 seconds.
I tend to agree with Jim Allister on that one. I'll tell Melissa, hey, you know what you do? Put 10 dead hunger strikers thing on the back, or put on Patrick Pearse, our hero, in the background. Dude, you can't stop what people have in their studies. They're entitled to have, like, whatever. I don't know what you
even they're engaged in government business.
I don't give a monkey. There's
a law.
Hold on. If it's assumed and called down to Jim Allister's, what do you call it? Right, if that's the case, let's apply it to everyone. But Jude, I don't think you're entitled to tell people what's the contents of their own home.
Would you say that you think Jim Allister wasn't aware of the fact that this Gallant book was right there?
I'd say place it there strategically.
Oh yeah! How dare you? How dare you?
Okay.
Okay, Pat. Thanks very much.
All the best, Jude.